Some people walk through life as if they carry a borrowed crown, their presence a shimmering illusion of strength, while others radiate a quiet force, an invisible pulse drawn from the depths of their being. The narcissist, cloaked in grandiosity, wields power like a blade stolen from another's forge, sharp but brittle, destined to crack under the weight of its own pretense. The empath, by contrast, breathes power as naturally as air, their essence woven into the fabric of the collective unconscious, a tapestry of feeling that binds the world's unspoken truths. What separates these two, Jung would argue, is not merely behavior, but the very architecture of the soul, a dance between the ego's hunger and the self's surrender. In this exploration, the shadows of narcissism and the light of empathy reveal a profound truth about human connection, one that asks you to look within and question: are you borrowing power to mask your wounds, or are you breathing it to heal them? The narcissist, in Jungian terms, is a prisoner of the ego, a figure enthralled by the persona, the mask they wear to dazzle the world. This mask, polished to perfection, is not merely a facade, but a fortress, built to shield a fragile core from the terror of insignificance. Jung saw the ego as a necessary servant, but for the narcissist, it becomes a tyrant demanding constant validation to sustain its inflated dominion. They borrow power from the external admiration, control, or dominance because their inner well is dry, choked by the shadow they refuse to face. The shadow, that repository of repressed desires, fears, and shame, lurks beneath their bravado, whispering truths they dare not hear. To acknowledge it would mean dismantling the throne. They've built a throne that rests on the backs of others' attention. Have you ever felt the pull of such a mask? The temptation to let the world's applause define your worth? The narcissist's tragedy is not their ambition, but their refusal to look inward to confront the chaos that festers when the ego reigns unchecked. Empaths, however, walk a different path, one that Jung might describe as the journey toward individuation, the integration of the self with the deeper currents of the psyche. They do not borrow power, they embody it, drawing from a wellspring that connects them to the collective unconscious, that vast reservoir of shared human experience. Their strength lies not in domination, but in resonance, in their ability to feel the unspoken, to carry the weight of others' pain as if it were their own. Yet this gift is not without its shadow. The empath's porous boundaries, their openness to the world's suffering, can become a crucible of self-neglect, where the narcissist projects their wounds outward, demanding others fill the void. The empath risks dissolving into the needs of those around them, losing the self in a sea of compassion. Have you ever found yourself drowning in another's emotions, unable to discern where their pain ends and yours begins? The empath's challenge is to honor their own boundaries, without dimming their light, to breathe power without suffocating under its weight. In the interplay of these archetypes, Jung's concept of projection becomes a key. The narcissist projects their shadow onto others, seeing in them the flaws they cannot admit in themselves: weakness, inadequacy, or failure. This projection is a defense, a way to externalize the inner chaos they refuse to confront. They borrow power by diminishing others, feeding on their admiration or submission to sustain the illusion of superiority. The empath, too, can fall into projection, casting their own unacknowledged strength onto others, believing themselves unworthy of the power they naturally wield. Both are caught in a dance of mirrors, reflecting distorted images of the self. Jung taught that true growth begins when one withdraws these projections, turning inward to face the shadow and integrate its lessons. For the narcissist, this means humbling the ego. For the empath, it means claiming their own space. What would it mean for you to withdraw your projections, to see yourself not through others' eyes, but through the lens of your own soul. The collective unconscious binds these two archetypes in a shared human struggle, the quest for wholeness. The narcissist in their hunger for external validation, and the empath in their surrender to others' needs. Both grapple with the same question: how does one become whole without losing oneself? Jung's answer lies in the process of individuation, a journey that demands courage to face the shadow, to embrace both the light and dark within. The narcissist must learn to relinquish borrowed power to find strength in vulnerability. The empath must learn to breathe power without apology, to honor their own needs as fiercely as they honor others. Both paths converge on the same truth. Authentic power arises not from control or sacrifice, but from integration, from aligning the ego with the deeper self. The dance between the narcissist and the empath is not merely a clash of personalities, but a mirror reflecting the eternal tension within the human psyche, a tension Jung saw as the crucible for growth. The narcissist, enthralled by the ego's siren song, constructs a world where they are the center, their power a borrowed flame that flickers with every shift in external approval. Their shadow, that unacknowledged abyss of doubt and shame, grows heavier with each denial, a weight they displace onto others through manipulation or blame. The empath, meanwhile, breathes power from a deeper source, their connection to the collective unconscious, granting them an almost otherworldly capacity to feel the currents of human experience. Yet this same gift can bind them to a cycle of self-erasure, their light dimmed by the needs they absorb. What binds these two, Jung would argue, is their shared avoidance of the self, one through inflation, the other through dissolution. Have you ever caught yourself chasing approval or losing yourself in another's pain, wondering where your own truth lies? In the narcissist's world, power is a currency hoarded and spent to maintain the illusion of invincibility. Jung's concept of the persona, the social mask worn to navigate the world, becomes their entire identity, a glittering shell that hides the fragility within. They project their shadow onto others, seeing weakness in those they dominate, inferiority in those they envy. This projection is not merely a defense, but a survival mechanism, a way to keep the ego's throne intact. Yet the throne is precarious, built on the shifting sands of external validation. The narcissist's charisma, their ability to captivate and command, is a borrowed spell, one that falters when the audience turns away. Their relationships, often marked by what modern attachment theory calls anxious or avoidant patterns, become battlegrounds where power is won or lost, never shared. Have you ever felt the sting of someone's need to control their charm, masking a hunger for your surrender? The narcissist's tragedy is their isolation, a solitude born of refusing the shadow's call to vulnerability. The empath, by contrast, lives in a world of resonance, their psyche attuned to the unspoken rhythms of others' emotions. Jung might describe them as vessels of the collective unconscious, their sensitivity a bridge to the archetypes that shape human experience: love, loss, fear, and hope. Yet this openness, this ability to breathe power from the depths, comes at a cost. The empath's shadow often lies in their unclaimed strength, their tendency to prioritize others' needs over their own. They may project their own worth onto those they help, believing their value lies in how much they give. In attachment theory, this mirrors the anxious, preoccupied style, where love is earned through sacrifice and boundaries blur under the weight of empathy. The empath risks becoming a martyr, their power diffused into the lives they seek to heal. Have you ever felt your own needs slip away, drowned out by the pull of someone else's pain? The empath's challenge is to reclaim their center, to breathe power, not just for others, but for themselves. Jung's vision of individuation offers a path through this labyrinth. For the narcissist, it demands a descent into the shadow, a willingness to face the insecurities they've buried beneath their grandeur. This is no easy task. The ego clings fiercely to its illusions, and the narcissist's fear of vulnerability can feel like annihilation. Yet only by embracing the shadow can they discover authentic power, a strength that needs no audience to shine. For the empath, individuation requires a different courage, the courage to set boundaries, to honor their own needs as sacred. This is not selfishness, but self-preservation, a recognition that their light burns brightest when it is not consumed. Both must withdraw their projections. The narcissists blame the empath's self-denial and turn inward to integrate the fragmented self. What would it mean for you to face your own shadow, to see the parts of yourself you've pushed away or given too freely? The interplay of these archetypes reveals a deeper truth about human connection. The narcissist and the empath are not opposites, but reflections, each holding a piece of the other's puzzle. The narcissist's hunger for power mirrors the empath's fear of claiming it. The empath's selflessness echoes the narcissist's hidden yearning for authentic connection. Jung believed that the collective unconscious binds us all, weaving our individual struggles into a shared tapestry of meaning. To move toward wholeness, both must confront the lies they tell themselves, the narcissist's myth of invincibility, the empath's illusion of unworthiness. Only then can they step into relationships not as borrowers or givers of power, but as equals sharing a strength born of inner alignment. The narcissist and the empath, locked in their eternal dance, embody the polarity of the human soul, striving a struggle Jung saw as the heart of individuation. The narcissist, enthralled by the ego's glittering illusions, borrows power from the world's gaze, their identity a fragile construct held together by the threads of admiration. Their shadow, heavy with unacknowledged shame and fear, festers in silence, projected outward as judgment or control. The empath, meanwhile, breathes power from a deeper well, their connection to the collective unconscious, granting them a profound sensitivity to the world's unspoken truths. Yet their shadow lies in their tendency to dissolve, to let their own essence bleed into the needs of others. Both in their own way evade the self, the narcissist by inflating it, the empath by surrendering it. Have you ever felt the weight of your own avoidance, the quiet ways you sidestep the truth of who you are? For the narcissist, life is a stage, and they are the star, their power, a performance that demands an audience. Jung's concept of the persona takes on a tyrannical form here, a mask so tightly worn it becomes indistinguishable from the self. Beneath it lies the shadow, a repository of doubts and insecurities that threaten to unravel their carefully crafted image. To maintain their illusion of grandeur, they borrow power through manipulation, charm, or dominance, feeding on the validation of others. Modern attachment theory might describe their relationships as a dance of avoidance, where intimacy is a threat to their fragile control. They push away those who come too close, fearing exposure, yet crave the very connection they sabotage. Their power is a mirage, shimmering but insubstantial, collapsing the moment the spotlight fades. Have you ever caught yourself chasing a fleeting sense of worth, only to find it slips through your fingers like sand? The empath, in contrast, carries a different burden. Their power flows from an almost mystical attunement to the collective unconscious, a sensitivity that allows them to feel the undercurrents of human experience: grief, joy, longing. Jung might see them as bearers of the anima or animus, archetypes of the soul that bridge the personal and the universal. Yet this gift can become a trap, their porous boundaries leaving them vulnerable to the weight of others' emotions. Their shadow lies in their unclaimed strength, their belief that their worth is tied to how much they give. Attachment theory might label this as anxious, preoccupied, a pattern where love is earned through self-sacrifice and the self is lost in the process. The empath breathes power, but too often they exhale it for others, leaving little for themselves. Have you ever felt your own light dim, drained by the pull of someone else's needs? Jung's path of individuation offers a way out of these cycles, a journey that demands both archetypes confront their shadows. For the narcissist, this means dismantling the persona, stepping off the stage to face the raw, unfiltered truth of their inner world. It is a descent into vulnerability, a terrifying unraveling of the ego's defenses. Yet only by embracing this shadow can they find a power that does not depend on others' applause, a strength born of self-acceptance. For the empath, individuation requires a reclamation of boundaries, a recognition that their compassion is most potent when it includes themselves. They must learn to say no, to hold space for their own needs without guilt. This is not a betrayal of their empathy, but its fulfillment, a way to breathe power that sustains rather than depletes. What would it look like for you to claim your own space, to honor your needs as fiercely as you honor others? In the interplay of these archetypes, the collective unconscious reveals a shared human longing for connection, for wholeness, for a power that feels authentic. The narcissist and the empath are not enemies, but mirrors, each reflecting what the other lacks. The narcissist's hunger for validation echoes the empath's fear of asserting their worth. The empath's selflessness mirrors the narcissist's buried desire for genuine intimacy. Jung believed that true growth comes from integrating these opposites, from weaving the ego and the shadow into a cohesive self. This is not a journey of perfection, but of courage, a willingness to face the parts of yourself you've exiled or ignored. The narcissist must learn to let go of borrowed power. The empath must learn to breathe it without apology. Both must step into the tension of their own contradictions, trusting that wholeness lies on the other side. The narcissist and the empath, though seemingly opposed, are bound by a shared thread in the tapestry of the collective unconscious, a yearning for wholeness that Jung saw as the soul's deepest calling. The narcissist, with their borrowed crown, constructs a fortress of ego, their power a fragile illusion sustained by the world's adulation. Their shadow, a cauldron of unspoken fears and shame, is cast outward, transforming others into mirrors of their own disowned flaws. The empath, by contrast, breathes power from a primal source, their sensitivity a conduit to the archetypes that pulse beneath human experience. Yet their shadow lies in their self-forgetting, their tendency to dissolve into the needs of others until their own light flickers. Both in their dance of avoidance skirt the edge of their true selves, the narcissist by exalting the ego, the empath by surrendering it. Have you ever felt the pull of such avoidance, the subtle ways you hide from the fullness of who you are? For the narcissist, the world is a mirror reflecting back the grandeur they crave. Jung's concept of the persona dominates their psyche, a mask so convincing it obscures the trembling self beneath. Their power is borrowed from the external praise, control, or envy, because their inner world feels too perilous to explore. The shadow, that repository of vulnerability and doubt, is projected onto others, turning friends into rivals, lovers into threats. Attachment theory might frame their relationships as avoidant, marked by a push-pull dynamic, where closeness is both desired and feared. They wield power like a blade, sharp but brittle, cutting those who come too near. Yet this blade is double-edged, wounding the narcissist most of all, isolating them in a prison of their own making. Have you ever felt the loneliness of chasing a hollow victory? The emptiness that lingers when the crowd's applause fades? The empath, meanwhile, lives in a state of communion, their psyche open to the currents of the collective unconscious. Jung might see them as carriers of the archetype of the healer, their empathy a bridge between the personal and the universal. They breathe power not as dominance, but as resonance, feeling the world's pain as their own. Yet this openness is their shadow's breeding ground, where unclaimed worth and unspoken needs fester. They may give until they break, believing their value lies in their sacrifice. In attachment theory, this echoes the anxious, preoccupied style where love is a currency earned through selflessness and boundaries blur into oblivion. The empath's power, though profound, risks becoming a martyr's pyre, consuming them in the act of giving. Have you ever lost yourself in another's story, your own voice drowned out by the weight of their emotions? Individuation. Jung's path to wholeness demands that both archetypes face their shadows with unflinching courage. For the narcissist, this means dismantling the persona, stepping into the vulnerability they've spent a lifetime fleeing. It is a harrowing journey, one that feels like annihilation to an ego accustomed to control. Yet in this descent, they uncover a power that needs no audience, a strength rooted in self-acceptance rather than external acclaim. For the empath, individuation requires a reclamation of the self, a refusal to let their light be dimmed by others' needs. They must learn to hold boundaries as sacred, to breathe power, not just for the world, but for their own soul. This is not a rejection of empathy, but it's deepening a recognition that true compassion begins with the self. What would it mean for you to face your own shadow, to embrace the parts of yourself you've exiled or given away? The narcissist and the empath, though locked in their distinct struggles, are reflections of a shared human truth, the quest for authentic power. The narcissist's hunger for validation mirrors the empath's fear of claiming their worth. The empath's selflessness echoes the narcissist's buried longing for connection. Jung believed that the collective unconscious weaves these opposites into a single story, a narrative of integration where the ego and the shadow find harmony. To borrow power is to live in exile from the self. To breathe it is to return home. Both archetypes must confront their projections. The narcissist's blame, the empath's self-denial, and turn inward to weave their fragmented selves into wholeness. This is not a journey of erasing flaws, but of embracing them, of recognizing that power in its truest form arises from the courage to be fully human. The narcissist and the empath, like twin stars orbiting a shared center, illuminate the paradox of human striving, each chasing power in their own way, yet both tethered to the same longing for wholeness. The narcissist, draped in the illusion of supremacy, borrows power from the world's gaze, their ego a fortress built to shield a fragile core. Their shadow, a silent storm of fear and inadequacy, is cast outward, transforming others into vessels for their unacknowledged pain. The empath, by contrast, breathes power from the depths of the collective unconscious, their sensitivity a conduit to the unspoken currents of human experience. Yet their shadow lies in their self-effacement, their tendency to let their own light dissolve into the needs of others, both in their refusal to fully face the self-walk paths that diverge yet converge, revealing the Jungian truth that true power arises only through integration. Have you ever sensed the weight of your own contradictions? The ways you both crave and fear the truth of your own strength? The narcissist's world is a stage where they play the role of deity, their power a performance sustained by the applause of others. Jung's concept of the persona, the mask worn to navigate the world, becomes their entire being, a glittering shell that obscures the trembling self within. Their shadow, replete with doubts, shame, and the fear of being ordinary, is projected onto those around them, turning allies into threats, lovers into mirrors of their own disowned flaws. Attachment theory might describe their relationships as a dance of avoidance, where intimacy is a battlefield and vulnerability feels like defeat. They borrow power through control, charm, or manipulation, but it is a hollow strength crumbling when the audience turns away. Their isolation is their unspoken tragedy, a solitude born of refusing the shadow's invitation to humility. Have you ever felt the fleeting rush of external validation, only to find it leaves you emptier than before? The empath, meanwhile, exists in a state of quiet resonance, their psyche attuned to the archetypes that pulse beneath the surface of life: grief, hope, connection. Jung might see them as embodiments of the anima, the soul's bridge to the collective unconscious. Their empathy, a sacred gift that binds them to the world's heart. Yet this gift carries a shadow, a tendency to lose themselves in the act of giving. To believe their worth lies in how much they sacrifice. Attachment theory might frame this as anxious, preoccupied, a pattern where love is earned through selflessness and the self is submerged in the needs of others. The empath breathes power, but too often they exhale it for the world, leaving their own soul gasping. Their challenge is to recognize that their light is not diminished by claiming it, that boundaries are not barriers, but acts of self-love. Have you ever felt your own needs slip away, drowned by the pull of someone else's story? Individuation. Jung's path to wholeness calls both archetypes to the crucible of self-confrontation. For the narcissist, this means dismantling the fortress of the ego, stepping into the vulnerability they've spent a lifetime fleeing. It is a descent into the shadow, a reckoning with the fears they've projected onto others. This journey feels like annihilation, yet it is the birthplace of authentic power, a strength that needs no external validation. For the empath, individuation demands a reclamation of their own space, a refusal to let their light be consumed by others' needs. They must learn to breathe power for themselves, to hold boundaries as fiercely as they hold compassion. This is not a betrayal of their empathy, but its fulfillment, a recognition that true connection flows from a centered self. What would it look like for you to step into your own power, to embrace the parts of yourself you've hidden or given away? The narcissist and the empath, though caught in their separate struggles, are mirrors of a shared human quest for a power that feels true, for a self that feels whole. The narcissist's hunger for dominance reflects the empath's fear of claiming their worth. The empath's selflessness echoes the narcissist's buried yearning for authentic connection. Jung's vision of the collective unconscious binds them in a single story, a narrative of integration where opposites are reconciled. To borrow power is to live in exile. To breathe it is to come home. Both must withdraw their projections, the narcissist's blame, the empath's self-denial, and weave their fragmented selves into a cohesive whole. This is not a journey of perfection, but of courage, a willingness to embrace the light and shadow within, to find power in the truth of being human. The narcissist and the empath, though cast as opposites in the theater of the psyche, are bound by a shared pilgrimage toward wholeness, each grappling with the same eternal question: how does one become fully themselves? The narcissist, cloaked in a borrowed mantle of power, constructs a world where they are the sun, their ego's radiance sustained by the orbit of others' admiration, their shadow brimming with unspoken fears of inadequacy, festers in silence projected onto those they seek to dominate or diminish. The empath, meanwhile, breathes power from the depths of the collective unconscious, their soul a vessel for the world's unspoken joys and sorrows. Yet their shadow lies in their self-erasure, their tendency to let their own essence dissolve into the needs of others. Both in their dance of avoidance skirt the edge of individuation, the Jungian path that demands they face the self in all its complexity. Have you ever felt the quiet tremor of your own contradictions, the ways you both long for and resist the truth of your own power? For the narcissist, life is a performance, their power, a carefully choreographed illusion that depends on the world's applause. Jung's concept of the persona, the social mask, becomes their entire identity, a dazzling facade that conceals a fragile core. Their shadow, heavy with shame and the fear of being ordinary, is cast outward, transforming others into mirrors of their disowned flaws. Attachment theory might describe their relationships as avoidant, marked by a relentless need for control that keeps true intimacy at bay. They borrow power through charm, manipulation, or dominance, but it is a fleeting strength crumbling when the spotlight fades. Their isolation is their silent wound, a solitude born of refusing the shadow's call to vulnerability. Have you ever chased the fleeting high of external validation only to find it leaves you hollow, a stranger to your own heart? The empath, by contrast, lives in a state of communion, their psyche open to the archetypes that weave through the collective unconscious love, loss, hope. Jung might see them as carriers of the anima, or animus, their empathy a bridge to the universal soul. Yet this openness is their shadow's crucible, where unclaimed worth and unspoken needs gather like storm clouds. They give until they break, believing their value lies in their sacrifice, a pattern attachment theory might call anxious preoccupied. Their power, though profound, risks becoming a martyr's flame, consuming them in the act of giving. To breathe power fully, they must learn to hold boundaries as sacred, to honor their own needs without guilt. This is not a diminishment of their empathy, but it's deepening, a recognition that their light shines brightest when it is not exhausted. Have you ever felt your own voice fade, drowned by the weight of another's pain? Individuation. Jung's path to integration calls both archetypes to face their shadows with courage. For the narcissist, this means dismantling the ego's throne, stepping into the vulnerability they've spent a lifetime fleeing. It is a descent into the shadow, a reckoning with the fears they've projected onto others. This journey feels like annihilation, yet it is the birthplace of authentic power, a strength that needs no audience. For the empath, individuation demands a reclamation of the self, a refusal to let their light be consumed. They must learn to breathe power for themselves, to say no without apology. This is not selfishness, but self-preservation, a way to sustain their compassion without losing their center. What would it mean for you to face your own shadow, to embrace the parts of yourself you've hidden or given too freely? The narcissist and the empath are not adversaries, but reflections, each holding a piece of the other's truth. The narcissist's hunger for power mirrors the empath's fear of claiming it. The empath's selflessness echoes the narcissist's buried desire for connection. Jung's vision of the collective unconscious weaves them into a single narrative, a story of integration where the ego and shadow find harmony. To borrow power is to live in exile from the self. To breathe it is to return home. Both must withdraw their projections. The narcissists blame the empath's self-denial and turn inward to weave their fragmented selves into wholeness. The individual who truly understands their depths extends that grace to the world.